Welcome to our Poetry Town Council meeting of our beautiful town of Poetry, Texas on this Tuesday night, June 20th, 2023. We welcome you and want you to feel heard, valued, informed, and connected to your town and its council. We welcome diversity of opinion and want minority views as well as majority views to be heard. We also appreciate mutual respect despite opposing view. Your opinions, suggestions, and comments in favor of or against the topic are welcome. At this time, I need to remind the public that a disruption of this meeting may be considered a criminal offense according to Texas Penal Code 3813 and 4205. You must be signed up to speak during the meeting and stay on topic according to state law. To preserve the order and decorum of the meeting, any person who makes profane, slanderous, threatening remarks or becomes disruptive during the meeting will be asked to leave or may be escorted out by a peace officer and given a citation. At this time, we have our volunteer clerk, Evie Anderson, who is going to take roll call.
Councilman Mike Jaffe.
Here.
Councilman Terry Fowler.
Here.
Councilmember Tom Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Simeon White.
Here.
Councilmember Jonathan Blake.
Here.
Mayor Tara Sankovic.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, and quorum is confirmed. So Mr. Daryl Watson volunteered. He wrote the scripture for us today, and so I asked him just about an hour ago to say our Pledge of Allegiance and our invocation. So please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. To the council, as the mayor said, there was a passage of scripture that I offered, and that is my prayer for this council going into a new term. As Paul wrote in Ephesus from 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 1 and 2, first of all then, I urge that supplications, prayers, thanksgivings be made for all people, for kings and all who are in high positions, that we may lead in a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way. Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to be servants, both to our community and to each other. My prayer is that this community will pull together as they have and continue to pull together to lift up these leaders, to bind together the strengths that we have, and to spur on those with weaknesses to help them to become better and be the best they can be. Lord, bless and guide and direct each and every one of us, here and now and as we go. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Watson. Okay, so under items of community interest, we do have, I am looking for additional grant writers to help us with, there are some government grants and we want to take advantage of those potential grants out there. And so if you know of anybody who has been successful with grant writing, we have one person who has said he has been successful and is tentatively working on it, but we definitely could use some more help in that department. If you live in Kaufman County, we want to hear from our citizens. Anyone who believes that they were adversely affected by the property ID split out in Kaufman County to please email with factual information regarding such to my office, mayor.tar@poetrytexas.org. To solve any problems, we need factual information, and we want to hear if there has been some negative impact from that. In talking with Coy Johnson, the deputy appraiser of Kaufman County, he said that the split out does not affect your property values as they are grouped together in what's called an economic unit when evaluating the values. He says it doesn't affect the one's homestead or agricultural exemptions. Now, there is always a possibility of error. If you think so, you can call their office. The town welcomes a newly approved solid waste vendor named Texas Contractor Roll-Offs, which is owned by Kevin Potts. His email is kpotts@texascontractorrolloffs.com, or his number is 469-576-5162. Now, they only service large 15, 20, and 25-yard dumpsters at this time, but they are an approved vendor. They filed their paperwork, and so we welcome them to our town. I want to say a big shout out thanks to Chad DeLita and his crew from 365 Land Development for clearing 3 down trees on the town hall site free of charge, and thanks to Mike Jaffe, who I did tug their arm to do so, but they were they took care of it quickly, and it's very appreciated. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on to G, reports. The May end of 2023. So currently, beginning bank balance was $49,052.74. Our deposits were slim in May at $914.07. Again, we're mostly fed quarterly. Our expenses were $17,518.59. And you can see listed there is the $7,000 was for the septic installation. And the large items, there was a $3280 for the Kaufman County roads. Hunt County roads, $1,000, and those are the larger items. And so our ending balance as of May end was $32,448.22. A spot of great news. As we received in the letter, I think last month, I read the letter which showed that the Texas Comptroller would be doing an ACH. We filled out all the paperwork, an ACH deposit into the town's account each second Friday of the month. So from the sales and use revenues, drum roll please, we got $6,432.63. So that was, I believe, from just the month of May. So that means that in our area, we had probably $428,000 in sales. And remember, that's anytime you buy Amazon, eBay, and Poetry is getting credit for that. So that 1.5% adds up. The pennies add up. So that is our very, now I will say in May we received a small little sum, but they did say officially it would begin in June. So in May, we actually got $392 and I'm not even sure why exactly they haven't. And I have filed the report to request the itemization. And so I filed that 3 weeks ago. I haven't received anything yet, but hopefully that'll be forthcoming. Okay. All right, Secretary's report. Deputy City Secretary Teresa wrote out a few things. And so Evie Anderson will be reading from her report.
Yes, there are 3 items. May 31st, 2023, letters went out to FEC customers who received reimbursement checks and had not to date cashed those checks. These checks need to be cashed, voided, or reissued as soon as possible. July public hearing notice will run in Terrell Tribune no earlier than June 27, 2023, or later than July 6, 2023. A reminder, the Town of Portry's town office is open Thursdays from noon to 4 p.m. weekly. Temporary location, 19012 FM 986. The far entrance on the left of Portry Tac and Ag front door. Thank you.
Thank you, Evie. And again, that is from Deputy City Secretary Teresa Scholander. Okay, so number 3, report on the town hall progress. So far, we had the door removed. We had a doorknob installed. We had a light switch and light bought and installed. I personally did the installation. We did, so we had an electrician, Kane Hansard, came in and put in the electrical line for the closet light. We're waiting on nephew. So if you know a good sheetrocker, we need, the fellow that had done it last time, sadly, is fighting cancer and only has a short time apparently. So we are looking for a sheetrocker to, and it's just a small closet, so it shouldn't take too long. We, of course, if you hadn't heard, the septic was installed. It passed septic inspection. So we have a meeting this week for the Tom and I will be meeting this week for the concrete parking lot, the ADA parking lot and sidewalk. So we're going to be going over that, and that should be poured fairly soon, we hope. Okay, so we will be looking for, we are still soliciting donations for anyone who wants to donate to the cause of the tile installation in the ADA bathroom. We do have all the tile already donated, and we have some money, but we could utilize some more. So if you feel so led and you want to contribute to that cause, I'd be happy to receive that. Okay. Okay, moving on to H, the consent agenda. The minutes from the May 16th meeting, thanks to Sherry Vinson who volunteered to type those up. Are there any, I guess we have to vote in whole on that.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Jaffe, seconded by Councilmember Fowler. All those who approve?
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. Okay. Okay, we have also on the consent agenda our legal bill. It was suggested that since we're not going to not pay our legal bill, that it be put on consent agenda. It's in the amount of $1,023.75. Do we have a motion to approve that?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember White, seconded by Councilmember Blake, to approve paying the legal bill of $1,023.75. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to the regular agenda. At this time, we would like to discuss and present an award for the first annual Poetry Agriculture Scholarship. The recipient goes to, okay, so Landon Lord. Come on up, Mr. Lord. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead and stand there. Yeah, go ahead and stand in front of there. And is there any discussion from the council at all on this? I did say discuss, so.
Congratulations.
Okay.
Appreciate you applying and wish you well.
Okay, and I want to shout out to Two Guys Laser. Is that what it's called? Two Guys Laser?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so Chad McFarland's business, they donated this beautiful plaque which says, presented to Landon Lord, Town of Poetry, 2023 Agriculture Scholarship recipient. We also have a framed certificate signed by myself and two the council members who did, were on that selection committee, so.
Photo op, photo op.
It's nice.
Congratulations.
Yep.
So that scholarship was designed to promote agriculture in our area, and we're so proud of our first recipient of that. Thank you also to the donors, Chad West, who was very generous in his donation, and also Councilmember Fowler, and then an anonymous donation. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, so item number 2, discuss and take action on the request for qualifications for a general use town engineer. So thank you to Tom Anderson. He kind of combined, we had the one that I think our attorney put together, and then we had the reference from Simonton, Texas, which was quite lengthy. And then Tom kind of, I believe you can tell us about it, Tom. Why don't you tell us about it?
Well, I guess Simonton was the one of the ones I looked at, the town of Simonton, which is down by Houston, small town. I thought it was kind of concise and to the point and covered everything, and so I rolled it in with the one that the mayor, with the lawyer, Mr. Berman, had, which I thought was general, but there were some more things need to be specific. And without really going through the details, I guess the big one is the selection process. One thing I did change from Mr. Berman's is I said would be the town council that would decide, and the reason is I talked with Jackie, the mayor of Quinlan, I can't remember his last name.
Goldman, I believe.
Goldman?
Jackie
Yeah,
Goldman.
Jackie Goldman, and about this, and he said, yeah, you need the town council to approve it. He said he didn't, because he doesn't get a vote, but he said that way it kind of gets flushed out, and then whenever you have to do any projects and have a RFQ come in the future, in addition to this, well, he said it's best to have the town councils approve it rather than just the town, so I put that in. Then on the selection process, item 3, which is, I kind of combined what I got out of Simonton with, I cleaned up the wording a little bit, and I actually did a little bit based on some of the wording I saw from Quinlan. And so I had those 5 categories, and I just roughly put in 20% each, but that's for lack of anything better. But I would have to say, and this is according to Jackie Goldman, he said you need to have that selection criteria, and which they do at Quinlan, and then he said you need to have it assigned weightings that keeps it perfectly legal, and then when the council has something to vote on based on a rating criteria for each one. So anyway, I open to any suggestions on any of this, and I guess that's the one area I would say people might take exceptions to is that 5-point rating system and assignments, percentage assignments. Other than that, it's a lot like what the mayor, the lawyer, Mr. Berman, put out. Plus what I learned talking with Jackie Goldman at Quinlan, the mayor. He's been the mayor there for 8 years, so he's been through this a lot, he said. Oh, and one thing that the mayor had, that Mr. Berman had, which was a little different, is that you first do a selection based on the capabilities, then you negotiate price, and if you can't negotiate price, you move to the next one.
So that is by state law.
But you don't put
the
in price in
requirements.
their bid.
Right. The state is very specific on these kind of things, so.
Yeah, I
we-
presume that's a legal reason.
Mhm.
So anybody has any suggestions, well, I'm open to them.
Do we have any citizens who've signed up for this one? Oh. Okay. We passed you anyway, but thank you.
Worked out.
Okay. Okay, any comments from council on that?
You know, I think it looks good, Tom. I appreciate you putting all the effort in, and I like the fact that it's kind of compact. And, you know, I think here again, until we've gone through a cycle or two of this, we're really not going to know firsthand what worked well and what didn't. So I think seeking the advice of others that have done this and starting with something, I think, is a good approach. This looks like a real good start.
So I did have a question about one of the documents. Is it included this Town of Poetry, Texas Standard Form Professional Service Agreement? The longer bit here, was this part of what you were wanting to see in there, Mr. Tom?
I'm sorry, Simeon, I couldn't, I don't have my,
Oh, that's all right. Here, I'll speak into it a little bit more there. We get real close.
And that's Berman's version.
Oh, that's Berman's?
That's
Okay.
Berman's version. The shorter one is Tom's version.
okay, can you say it again, please?
Well, I was just asking about which, if this was Berman's, Mr. Jeffy just said.
So this is the form that says the standard form professional services agreement. Did you want that included with what you wrote or not?
I see. You're talking about the detail?
Yes.
My thinking is this, is that most companies would have their own, and we're gonna have to negotiate that with a company. I mean, that's my experience, and it looks a lot like this, but my suggestion is this, is just go ahead and approve the request for qualifications. Then, when we actually get down to negotiating with a specific company, we'll have to go through this standard professional services agreement. And by the way, there was quite a few things in there that I looked at and I said, that's gonna have to be changed or cleaned up. And having done this myself, is companies will come in and have their own suggestions for it. So my feeling is hold off on this until we select somebody, then sit down and agree with it. And, and if the first one doesn't work out, go to the second one. But there is a lot more cleanup that's needed in that services agreement, in my view.
I agree with that. I was especially looking at a couple sections on there that I think we do need to have in a document sooner or later, whether it's in the request for qualifications or the agreement, specifically the insurance requirements, which aren't in the one that you put together, but I guess they don't really need to be if they're gonna be in our service agreement. I just noticed they were in the ones in, how do you pronounce that? Simonton?
Yes.
Yeah, they were in Simonton's at the end, so. Hey, if we don't need them, then, or in this document, then.
Well, I think we absolutely will need it. It's just the timing of when.
Right,
And-
which document?
And I guess my feeling is rather than hold up for that, because I had a lot of things in the services agreement I thought needed fixing. But the first thing is if we can get the RFQ out and then get, some companies in and figure out who we would like, then we can spend a little more time getting the services agreement cleaned up.
Necessarily wouldn't the services agreements to prevent someone from being interested in our town, the services. So I agree. I like the conciseness of your document.
Makes sense to me.
Motion to approve?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Jaffe, seconded by White. All those in favor, raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. Okay, number 3, modifying budget ordinance to take money from legal fund to provide for road and election costs, you'll see on I did email, I need to apologize. When we talked about this previously, I didn't realize that we had to have an ordinance. Our previous legal firm said we could do it at the end of the fiscal year. New attorney, new methods. He believes it should be done at this time, so that's why we need to have a formal ordinance, because the budget is enacted with an ordinance. He believes it has to be modified with an ordinance. So, with that said, we also, I want to ask if now I had put in the QuickBooks version, which I think I sent out with the packet before I had left for a week. But today, this afternoon, I also put the Excel version. Did you all receive that? The Excel version? Okay, good. I thought that might be a little more clarifying. So on the Excel version, in yellow is exactly what I'm proposing. that we subtract $14,151 from legal, which I felt was really inflated anyway and not happy about, but we were trying to accommodate our then legal team. We now have a new legal firm, which is much more economical. So subtracting from that, and then adding the difference to, remember we had the 500, the attorney had said we should go ahead and pay for the 5-year lease on the ground, the parking lease. So adding 400 to the grounds and building care, that's where we took the parking lease out of. And then adding $2,400 to election cost, because that was more than expected. We did talk about that, I think, a month or two ago. The building insurance was more comprehensive, so the quote, so adding $1,351 to that, because we've been doing it piecemeal, and so now it's all rolled into one. And so that's a total of $1,710.66, and the other change proposed that we had already discussed and approved was the adding $10,000 to pothole repair, for a total of $26,060. So that does make us have a balanced budget, just those 4 areas of changes, 3, adding to road repair, election cost, the insurance, and then the parking. So, and then taking all of that from legal fees. Any comment?
Question, is it
Okay.
necessary to add 10,000 to road and maintenance since we're getting money from the state for sale, from the
Well,
sales and use
since-
tax?
Since we've already spent past that, yes, for this fiscal year, yes, because in our budget, we have allotted $15,000 for the roads, or excuse me, for this revenue from sales and use tax. But we've already spent probably 3, 4, at least by the end of the fiscal year, that'll all be used up, I'm sure, so.
So the 6432 isn't an additional income source?
Well, and I know that you weren't here for this, so the sales and use tax revenue at the top, the 15,000, that was estimated. And if this month's revenue holds, now we don't know, we won't know for a full year what our complete sales and use tax revenue is, but if it holds, if we, receive the, over $6,000 for the month of May, then it's potentially that we have $70,000 to $100,000 coming in from sales and use tax revenue, but I don't know. It's an unknown. But we estimated in our budget, and of course our fiscal year ends end of September, that we will blow past that 15,000, but again, it's an unknown.
So we've already spent some on road repair and haven't brought in any money until just now from the sales and use. Do you happen to know if we can apply retroactively what we've gained from sales and use to past expenses in that category in the same fiscal year? Since sales and use is earmarked for road repair, are we gonna have to spend that, let's say it's $6,000 a month, $6,000 a month actively on road repair from now? Or can we say that in total, if it's 3 months and we get 18,000 from sales and use, can we kind of apply that to what we've spent in the past?
That's a good question. So we know that from sales and use tax by law, it has to, 100% of that has to go for roads. Now, in our roads, road repair and maintenance, we have 2 itemized categories. We have the pothole repair and other cleanup, and then we have savings for road refurbishment. So I would think I think it's up to council, but if we could go past that 15,000, then that might be discretionary. In my mind, that would still go for savings for road refurbishment, but that might have to be at a later date discussion.
That would, and to me, I mean, if we can't spend that money on past expenses, if you will, that means that we have $6,000 to spend each month for the rest of this fiscal year. And it wouldn't make, I don't think we're gonna spend $6,000 every month. So to me, it wouldn't make sense at that point to put 10,000 more in that specific fund. But if we can kind of apply what we're gaining in sales and use to the past expenses this year,
I see your logic in that. The problem is we've already gone past our other budget. We have to apply something to it. We've already gone past.
Well, and we don't have to spend the sales and use when we get it. I mean,
No.
we're gonna be accruing. We need to build up millions of
Right.
dollars in the refurbishment
I agree.
bucket, so
I agree.
we're not like in a bind where we have to get rid of that money. We need to be storing that up. We need kind of our short term, which is potholes, and then our long term, which is
Completely
rebuilding,
agree.
so.
Well, I guess just to be clear, my understanding, I thought, was that the money out of the budget for pothole repairs is pothole repairs, where the sales and use tax, that accumulates until we can do major refurbishment. In other words, you're not gonna do major refurbishment for $6,000. It's gonna take a lot more than that, which means we would have to accumulate a fund or some kind of a pot that we could then draw on to do the wholesale, where we don't just fill a pothole, we do some structural work on the roads to make them more sustainable, and some kind of a prioritization. Am I missing something, or is that generally what we're considering doing with the sales and use tax money?
Well, that was my understanding. I think, now granted, Simeon, the savings for road refurbishment, we put in there $3,000 as a placeholder, but maybe next budget year, we don't have to put that from our general fund. We just completely have that come out of our sales and use revenue. But I totally agree with, Mike on this is, we have significant roads, that we need to save for. We need to save for that refurbishment, complete overhaul. So,
But I'd also like to see us replenish the rainy day fund, right, put a little bit of money, and we can't do sales tax money into that fund.
We cannot.
It has to be from other categories, so we want to be careful, kind of to Simeon's point, because the sales money is restricted funds, and the other is unrestricted, we want to be careful, because one we can move around more than the other.
So are you saying we've already spent our entire budget on roads? Because the way I'm seeing it, we have $8,460 remaining in that account 6,100.
well, originally it had $16,060, but let me,
Because the budget's 26,060, and
well,
we've spent
it's
17.
I'm sorry, it's 26,000 with the 10,000 added.
With this add-on.
With it already added, because remember, we talked about this 2 months ago.
Okay.
We already added $10,000, but that's why I apologize, we kind of got our cart before the horse. We
I
have to do the
gotcha.
ordinance officially and to do that, but we already did that.
So officially, we're $1,000 overdrawn in account 6,100 per se, without adding this 10,000 to it, right?
Yes, we're already in the hole, so,
Okay.
but we voted, a couple months ago to go ahead and try and you do that. You can move, it's legal for us to move it around as we need. I mean, our legal bill was quite high, I felt like, and I was sad that we couldn't put more in our roads budget at, last year during the budget development, but now we know that we can. We have fewer legal bills, and
And do
so we can.
do we still have money on account with either county? Didn't we pay ahead on Kaufman?
I did contact Kelly on that, trying to get a listing of that.
It wasn't a lot, but I was
It was
thinking
around
we gave them,
$3,000.
$3,000.
On this last, it was Kaufman County H04, the project sheet H04, they still have 3 roads yet to complete. We paid for that, but they're short-staffed and they have other road projects, and I've been talking with them once a week, trying not to be much of a nag, but also trying to keep it fresh on their minds. Hey, but I'm still waiting for an itemization on that. For Hunt County, we paid $1,000, and then this last H07 project sheet, she sent a receipt, so they're spending everything that we give them plus some, and so.
Hypothetical
Comment?
question. If you can move money from other accounts into road repairs. And this kind of goes with what Simeon said. If after the fact, we get that fund with sales and use tax, can that money be moved back since it was never sales and use tax money? Or is that muddy the waters too much?
Well, I think with the current road projects that we have slotted, we're gonna be using every bit of that, or close to every bit of that 10,000. But I think what you're saying is, because it's an unknown. It's unknown. And so, now, what Mr. Berman said, that every time you make an adjustment in your budget, you need to have another ordinance. That's his line of thinking. Emily said, no, you just do it at the end of the year. So just keep that in mind, so.
Yeah. But there's no reason we could move it back if we could continue to get $6,400 a month, then we could kind of address Simeon's thing of,
We potentially could.
Okay.
We absolutely potentially could. I don't know that we're hurting that much that we would need to do that, but we potentially could if.
Okay.
Mhm.
And is the election cost just to cover what we owe, or is this, because we shouldn't have another election, I mean, anything can happen, but really for 2 years.
So, now, I have not received a bill yet from Hunt County. We, of course, are paid in full for Kaufman County. And that was based on the last election. So,
And I get trying to do one ordinance to pay for all of it. That's why I was wondering if you had notification that we're gonna owe additional monies, but,
I think we were expecting something around 12,000, and so I think that's when you had said $2,400, just to kind of make doubly sure. I remember that was your, Terry,
we
that was
yeah.
your recommendation, I think, a couple months ago to move it to,
but we still haven't got a bill.
well, I still do not have a bill, and
I
did
guess I
receive,
worry
however,
that we
a
get
contract for the fall.
Yeah, if we get a bill and it's more, we have to do another ordinance to,
I guess we do.
I guess that's what. Okay. I don't have a problem putting money in the road repairs. I think actually, we're doing the best we can, but we're getting behind. The sides of the roads are diminishing quicker than we can repair them. So I don't have a money putting the money in the road repairs as long as it, and I think it's coming from a legit place. We've definitely decreased our legal expenses. Partly, I think we're becoming a better council, and Berman's quick and precise and to the point. So I don't have a problem moving it to the road fund because I don't think we can spend enough money on our roads, quite frankly.
Well, I think on top of that, we've had a really rainy spring and summer, which has hurt the roads, a lot of roads. And that's maybe unusual, but that's a fact.
I think I heard from both commissioners that the extreme weather is the number one reason for the road potholes and degradation. So, yes, I think you're right, Tom.
Sorry, do we have public comments?
Chad McFarland signed up, but I don't see him. Chad, he's the only one on this one.
Terry, you want a motion?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with spending the money. So where's the Exhibit A? I guess I just want to make sure this ordinance is saying what the bottom of this handwritten note is.
So what I realized, Exhibit A would be this sheet,
Yeah, we're
because
gonna
that's what
attach this.
we're going to attach
Right.
this
Okay.
proposed amendment
Okay.
budget.
So
And-
I'll move to approve the ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
as written.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Fowler, seconded by Councilmember Anderson. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that passes unanimously.
And Tara, I should have mentioned, I like the way you did the summary, made it easier to follow for me.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so number 4, discuss and take action advertising city secretarial position vacancy. So, thank you, family. Congratulations again. Secretary Jana said that I could call her anytime for advice. She has a plethora of experience, so I'm glad of that. But Deputy Secretary Teresa is more than happy to come in from 12 to, or even 11 to 4 on Thursdays, but she cannot, do much more than that. And she's a whiz at the accounting, the bookkeeping, and she actually likes, taking care of the public information request. So we really need someone who can, do the minutes, who is really good at grammar and editing. One of the lion's share of this job really is editing and re-editing, and someone who can really pick up on that. And I've had to call on a lot of volunteers to do that, but I don't want to wear them out completely. And I'm grateful to Sherry Benson, Dorothy Dillon. They're really good editors. Tom's been a really good editor. But for that position, you need someone who can also comprehend. I'm still doing a lot of tasks that are really supposed to be the city secretary's task. Even, posting the agendas. Okay, that's really supposed to be in the job description of the city secretary. But in that absence, I've been doing that. But really, and I've been sending out, emails, but that really is supposed to be. It would be nice to have a city secretary who does have internet at home. A lot of times, city secretary has to be Johnny on the spot with things. We have a lot of legal deadlines. One of the biggest surprises about this whole job is how many legal deadlines there are. So that position, at least because we already have a deputy city secretary who's been wonderful, but does have some, health, elements that prevent her from doing much more. We do need that position filled, and I see it as someone who is very good at editing, comprehending legal, someone who can have internet and doesn't mind some of the deadlines. The nature of the job is a lot of deadlines, and so with that in mind,
And I believe, don't we need somebody that can do QuickBook, because Teresa may not be around forever either.
Well, that's a valid point. QuickBooks, someone to be proficient in it, they would have to work it for a good while. I mean, I can train a little bit, but it does take some time. But yeah, I mean, that for a backup, that's something to think about.
So you haven't advertised yet?
I have not, no, I have not. Now, I've just word of mouth, I've mentioned to several people, but if the council sees fit, do we want to advertise in somewhere? I mean, I have verbally mentioned it to numerous people and other mayors, and, because it really is a unique position. It's not just your average, secretarial position. It is very legally minded. It is very, they have, not everyone is good at editing, and I found that to be the case. Not anyone can see the typos and the arrows. It takes a special skill set to do that.
So presumably, if we advertise, we're going to have to spend some money?
That usually does take some money, yes.
Well, where would we do it old school in a newspaper, or does TML or somewhere have like a job board that we could?
In the previous vacancy, I did put something out in TML and got nowhere with that. But I could, I just wanted to be able to discuss it with you and maybe come up with some other ideas.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get any argument from me on replacing the position. I think Jana was a blessing.
Yes.
And I think things just ran a lot smoother when we had someone in that position. So I think we need to backfill as quickly as we can. So whatever that takes to attract people, I think we need to go forward with it.
And I guess I'd add, I think it would be a good idea to do advertising as opposed to just picking somebody that name comes in legally. We may be better off to have something publicly advertised, so when we pick somebody, we can say, hey, it is advertised. We don't want somebody to come up and say, you didn't let everybody know about this, as if a lot of people would be banging on the door to come in for the job.
Well, as history holds, that yes, no, there haven't been a lot of folks banging on the door.
Well, I can say from experience that, we should advertise in more than one place, as most people suggest you do, but also, I mean, if you're looking to save some money and also get a decent amount of applicants, I hire all my workers through Indeed, and it's free. You can pay to have your stuff at the front profile, but I mean, I've had it up for a week, and if you write it good enough, you'll have lots of applicants. At the peak of COVID, I mean, I had 400 people apply for one job. Now, you probably don't need that many applicants, but that is a way to get a lot of people to see it all at once. It's the biggest job marketplace in the U.S. currently, so.
Now, it's
Missing out.
interesting with Indeed, now, I'm not certain that this one, now with Indeed, don't they expect a certain percentage of payment?
They do not.
They do not.
It's free. You can pay,
Well, they're trying to sell you upgrades, I think, right?
they do.
It seems like
And you
I
can
almost
pay
hired some.
per application, if you want them faster.
Mm-hmm.
They'll try to sell you like $5 an application, which honestly isn't terrible anyways, because you can get 20 for $100. But if you're willing to just let it kind of take its natural course without them advertising it and bumping it really high on the listings, it's free.
Okay,
And other cities do it too. I mean, I've seen jobs for city secretaries specifically.
Okay.
Even city engineers and city managers.
well, I'm
like
glad you
Greenville.
mentioned that, because I tried that company about 3 years ago, and they were wanting quite a bit of money, but maybe they've changed it up, or, okay,
There's
no,
free
good,
options.
okay. Yeah, no, that's a good point there. So, how does council feel about advertising in the Herald, Greenville Herald, and then the Herald Tribune, or maybe something like Indeed would actually be more effective if it is free?
Yeah, I guess I'd be in favor of that, but I'd also be in favor of Simeon, since he seems to know more than most of us, is taking an active role in figuring out what to do and how to do it.
You better watch what you say, you're gonna get
Oh,
told.
that's all right. I have done it before, so
Okay.
I can help.
We can write something up and, okay. All right, well, I'm glad we've talked.
Can
Okay.
you make it on the front end of our website?
We could, yeah, you
I mean,
could,
that's-
absolutely.
That's also free. It should
Yep.
be citizens looking at it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, too. Okay. All right,
So I guess I would make a motion, we take the action we've discussed about doing the advertising
Wait,
with
we
the
have
advice of
comment?
Mr. White on the other end.
there are no citizen comments on this one.
Oh, sorry.
They're not any.
Okay.
You're fine.
Okay, we're good.
Okay, so we have a motion by Anderson. Was that a motion? A motion by Anderson. Is there a second?
Second.
What is the motion?
The motion is that we go ahead and do advertising for the city secretary with advice from Mr. White,
Through
Okay.
Indeed.com?
Through Indeed, and then also putting it on the website.
and putting it on the website
And
as well as the Greenville,
Terrell Tribune?
whatever it's called, yeah.
Do we want to pay for the Terrell Tribune?
I think we
Now,
have to.
the Terrell,
Is that our official Terrell Tribune, or?
Terrell Tribune is our official newspaper. Now, it can get quite expensive. It can be
Really?
several $100s.
Oh,
Yes.
well, maybe not.
And because of, we're having to post for that in the newspaper, as she mentioned, we're having to post, and I haven't got the bill yet, but it's usually $200 to $300, $400. So if we can do it through free means, because of the budget and knowing what we've already spent and what we have to spend, I would really hesitate to spend that at this moment. But,
Well, I guess, yeah, to me, we ought to start off the cheapest way, which
Okay.
is what Simeon said, but
okay.
if we don't have a lot of applicants, we might have to raise.
Okay,
the
so maybe we
advertising.
try this, and then, so we have a motion by Anderson to maybe try the free ones first, the Indeed and the website, and maybe just the Poetry Post, or all free
Yeah.
spots, and I think we have a second by Councilmember Blake. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Okay, number 5, discuss and take action on voting in the mayor pro tem for a one-year term. So, as you know, Councilmember Tom Anderson has served as the mayor pro tem. He's done an excellent job, I think. One of the things I'm realizing about that spot is because we haven't had a city secretary, I have had to really depend on that spot to assist with all kinds of things, from running items to each county. The availability for that spot is super important. And so just, I mean, this is more than what one person can do. There's a lot on the shoulders of your leaders, and not having a city secretary is definitely a hardship. And so that means that mayor pro tem spot is, I've really depended on Mr. Anderson to, do all kinds of things. And there is a lot of training involved, with the emergency management. And so just put that out there, that I'm really appreciative that he has stepped up into that role, and I'm thankful for that. And it's from the elections deadlines to, just coming, he is a co-signatory, so coming to sign things, just to take care of, if I'm tied up in a meeting, then he can go to another meeting and just team tag with me on that. And so it's not just if I die kind of situation. So it's been very active, and I'm very appreciative that he's done that. So anyway, we do have, okay, Glenn Strauss. Okay. All right, any other comment on that?
I don't want to make it overly competitive, Tara, but I'd like to nominate myself as a candidate for the mayor pro tem.
Okay. So, does Councilmember Anderson, are you still wanting that position?
Yeah, I'll do it if I'm asked.
Okay. So I would like to renominate Councilmember Anderson for that position, just simply because we are without a secretary and we need to streamline that. And he has been readily available, so I would say he's been very attentive. So he's done the lion's share of the editing on the newsletter. And so he's been very quick to get that back. And so we've got 2 to vote for, so I guess, is there anyone else who would like to throw their name into the ring?
Do we get to grill them with questions now?
Well,
Free snow cones for everybody.
No.
well, let's be kind, but maybe a few.
Well, my only question for Tom is, you said this is your last run at, you're giving it all we got right here, right?
That's correct. I don't intend to run again in 2 years.
Yeah, and I do appreciate everything you've done as this position, but I guess Mike, are you planning on running again next year?
You mean in 2 years?
Next
I
term?
don't have any idea.
Okay.
I wasn't planning on running this time, but, it just sort of happened. And honestly, my desire is, 1, to take load off of Tom, but 2, just to step up a little bit in my commitment to the council and to share. And I recognize, to Tara's comments, that although I've been second on some of these things, I haven't been quite as snappy as Tom on responding, but I am willing to step up and shoulder that load and try to, kind of to Darrell's point earlier, start bridging some of this gap that we've had over the last couple of years, start bringing things together a little bit more. So that's my reason for offering, and, if I don't get it, it's not going to hurt my feelings.
Tom, how much time will it take you to do the RFQ?
How many hours?
Yeah, I'm saying in the future, when we start getting these, we're asking a lot of you because you're an engineer. Is that something you want to add on to your resume as well as well?
No, it does take, yes, it did take a lot of time. I spent,
So moving forward, reviewing all the applicants that we get.
it's going to take time. Yeah.
So is that
because-
something that you want to co-do with your deputy, what's the position we're talking about, mayor pro tem and head RFQ Reviewer?
Well, I don't know that we made him head RQ
Or
purveyor.
who else better to serve that position? I mean,
Well, and I can say, yeah, there is going to be time, hopefully we get plenty of people applying. So between interviews, getting information, sifting through, and there will have to be some face-to-face. I don't believe in just doing things with paper for something that this important.
But we do have to take one at a time, according to state law on
Well-
that. And then we're getting off the topic a little bit there, but
well, it's
Yeah,
a
that-
combined job, though, that we're talking about
Yeah,
adding
but
more
I
to the
don't-
mayor pro tem.
okay, well, interviewing secretaries takes time too, so I don't know that that's really relevant.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's vote then.
Well, I'd ask what the mayor pro temp is gonna do overall, because I'd like to know your thoughts and expectations, because I think officially, there's nothing in particular the mayor pro temp does besides be there in case the mayor's gone. But Mr. Tom stepped into some positions, and I'd love to see him continue to do things like kind of champion the movement of the town hall specifically. I know he really cares about that, and I think he's done a great job, so, I mean, I'd hate to see, that dissipate if he wasn't mayor pro tem. So I'm just curious as to, what everyone was thinking this position implies.
Well, yeah, I'm not really sure. I guess a lot of this we're having to kind of make up as we go. And part of it is these phone calls from Tara that say, Tom, do you have a few minutes right now to go do an errand? And, it's
lot.
not her fault, it's just things come up. And
Yeah.
so being retired but not idle, well, I do get a lot of these calls.
Yeah.
We need to have something this morning, can you do it? So
Yeah.
I can say, Mike, if you get those phone calls, well, congratulations.
Well, and I'm fortunate to be in the same role. I'm retired, so I can pick
Yeah.
and choose. So my availability is good. To answer your question, Simeon, I see the role as one of just supporting the mayor, right? So it's just it's a council member that has taken on the additional responsibility of being available to the mayor when she needs something that, supports her, or that maybe she would normally do, but she can't be in two places, as she said earlier. So, that's what I see it as. But it's, I think all of our jobs is, and whatever else is needed.
Right.
But I think the mayor pro tem is specifically saying, I will add extra time to do whatever's necessary.
Well, so do we want to take a vote?
You can do that or arm wrestle.
Well, Mr. Tom, first, would you still be active in specifically the town hall and some of the other responsibilities that you've kind of taken on yourself? Or, if you didn't get the mayor pro temp, would you kind of let that fall to somebody else?
No, I just do whatever's needed. And that's kind of my feeling is, we're all having to make this up as we go because this is the first time for all of us.
Well, I guess I hesitate, even though I understand what you're saying, and I actually agree with part of that. My concern is because we don't have a city secretary, to have to go through kind of breaking a new mayor pro tem in, because there's been a learning curve to it, I believe. And heck, just the week or two of emergency management training and all of that. Since we don't have a city secretary at this time, I kind of hate to have too much change at this time. If, I guess we can always change it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to be able to deal with transitions of council members, of mayors,
Right.
and mayor pro tem. So I get your point. The simpler path would just be to leave everything alone, and maybe it works out that way, but.
If we had a written up document, it might be different, but in my mind, Mr. Tom's gonna help out anyways, and now Mr. Mike's volunteering to jump in there as well. Hey, that's just more people if we voted Mr. Mike. 'Cause,
Yeah, your
get some
wife
more
likes
work
the
done.
idea too, Tom, so, just so you know. She wants to vote.
Yeah.
As long as Mr. Tom keeps doing what he's doing, because I think he has done a fantastic job, and I'm so grateful.
I agree.
Amen.
Thank you, but I'm like Mike, my feelings are going to be hurt either way, so.
Well, without the city secretary, like I said, it is enormous amount of responsibility. I just kind of hate to change things up, but I'm willing to look at that maybe at a different time, but I don't know. But I guess it's up to council to vote on that. So at this time, we go ahead and take a vote. So all those in favor?
Do we need a motion, an official motion? How do we vote on this?
Well, we just
Because
vote for Tom,
there's,
vote for mine.
right, because
Okay.
there's two, we
Fair
would just take a vote. So all those in favor of Councilmember Anderson continuing as Mayor Pro Tem, raise your hand. Okay, all right, we have one. And then all those in favor of having Mike as Mayor Pro Tem?
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Now we get three people working for the town.
Congratulations, Mike.
Thank you, Tom.
Condolences.
I'll be
You
over
get these-
tonight for the training.
You get these morning calls.
That's right.
Okay, so moving on to number 6. Discuss and take action on regular scheduled meeting time to the third Thursday instead. We know that our new attorney firm is not available on Tuesday nights, and thankfully we don't need him an awful lot, but in case we did, it really be nice that he wouldn't have to totally rearrange something, or would do without, or he is available on Thursdays, and also the advantage of having on Thursdays is that you guys would get more time, because my goal with that is to go ahead and post it as usual on Friday afternoons, but then you would have it a little more time, because I understand, you don't have the offices are typically open on weekends, and I hear you when you say, look, we only have, maybe a day and a half to do any research with companies or offices, and I hear you on that. So my thought on that was, okay, if we just keep keep it, posting it on the Friday before, but then go ahead and have a Thursday meeting. And we would have to go ahead and make another sign, but that's $60, so.
So, Tom, you kind of expressed some desire in the past on dates. Tuesdays weren't good for you because of your,
Yeah, Quinlan basketball games are Tuesday and Friday. And so, yeah, with Evie's great nephew living with us, playing basketball, varsity basketball, yeah, we miss a lot of his games. They're Tuesday night games, not the Friday night. So, yeah, I would like to have it other than Tuesday night, any night other than Tuesday.
yeah, I'm the same way. I have a commitment. I have to miss every Tuesday that we meet. So Tuesday is, I'm here because it's a priority, but I would rather it be on a different day, and Thursday actually works good for me.
Okay,
That's good for me.
I'm good with it.
okay. So,
Terry, how does your schedule work? Is the firehouse
Terrible.
workable?
it
I've
was,
worked out my schedule for the next 2 years because of the Tuesday night meetings, so
oh,
that's all right. I guess the only thing that's really, I can move my schedule, but we moved the water board meetings to Tuesday, so I didn't have to take off twice a month. So now we would need to move the water board meetings to Thursday, so I don't have to take
Okay,
off
I'm
twice a
good
month.
with that.
But we'll make it work. So if it works for the majority.
okay, do we have a motion?
Make a motion, we change the meetings to this third Thursday, starting in July.
July?
Second?
Okay.
Can we
have-
start in August? Can we start in August?
Starting,
Well, because of your,
At least give me one day that I don't
right,
have to.
right,
All
okay,
right, well,
that makes
I mean,
sense.
it's a third Thursday, starting in August, except I'm also gonna,
Oh.
item 7, I have a conflict on the third Thursday in August.
That's the next agenda.
So do we want to start in September?
Yeah, let's just start them in September.
Okay. Well, give us
Now we
all
haven't
some
moved the
time.
meeting.
Okay, so your motion is to begin that in September?
September.
To start the third Thursday and starting in September
Okay, is there a second?
2023.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Anderson, seconded by Councilmember Blake, to move our regular scheduled meeting time to the third Thursday starting in September. And that's good. We'll have time to post that. All those in favor? Okay. And that passes unanimously. All right. Number 7, discuss and take action on changing the August meeting to Thursday, August 10th, or other appropriate date. So just as he said, Councilmember Anderson is out for 2.5 weeks, I
Well,
think.
2 weeks from
2 weeks?
August 15th through the 31st.
So in order to accommodate, as we try to, we've had perfect attendance for that reason. We've tried to accommodate all of our council, and when we, absolutely want to try to do that. So is there any problem with having that on August 10th? Or maybe, let's see.
That's a Thursday.
Earlier in the month is better for me. It doesn't make a difference.
Well, the problem I see with, and I don't have a secretary now, is if you bunch it up too much behind for the July meeting, then, see, I've got all the deadlines before that take enormous amounts of time, and then the newsletter to do. If you back it up too much, then I don't have adequate time to prepare and to post, and I really don't have much help right now, so.
Well,
Makes
but if we
sense.
include Tom, we've only got the first 2 weeks, right? Because then he's gone.
Right, and so I was trying to push it back as far, because we were gonna have tonight's meeting, June 20th, and then the newsletter, and then if it's on the 14th, and that means actually the deadlines are the next week, the 29th, and then the posting deadline would actually be on the 7th. So it doesn't give us much time as it is.
So Terry, what's your ability to change your schedule for
I'm good on the
August?
10th.
Is August 10th. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, August 10th, okay.
August 10th is a Thursday.
Yeah, August 10th, okay. Yep. Is that okay for you, Terry?
Yep.
Okay. In order to accommodate Mr. Anderson, is there anyone else? I don't see any comments on that, so.
So I'll make a motion, we change the August meeting from the 15th to the 10th.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Anderson, seconded by Councilmember Fowler, to move our August meeting to Thursday, August 10th. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Okay, thank you, guys. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute recess. Oh, my
Why is
God.
my mic so loud?
Okay, so the time is
My
now
mic's so loud.
7:44, and we're going to resume our regular meeting. Because the public has to know what we're talking about. We're talking about getting the shirts modified to say Mayor Pro Tem, and we're joking about overalls.
Take the thread off of Tom and put it
Okay.
on mine.
Yeah, so anyway. So, all in fun. Okay, so number 8, discuss and take action on the May 6th election results. So as a town council, our attorney has been very clear, we have to be careful. We don't really have anything to do with the election. We hire and contract with 2 different counties' election divisions because they're the professionals. And so we are to send everyone with questions to the elections department of each county. Now, Councilmember Fowler has, I think, done quite a bit of research and work on this, and he did send us quite a bit of information. I think late Sunday night, I didn't get it out. Secretary Teresa was without power and is still without internet, unfortunately. So I was kind of waiting back to hear from her because technically she's supposed to disperse that information. I'm not supposed to, but I went ahead and had to, which has been the case too often because she was without internet. So say a prayer for her, please. But so anyway, he did send quite a bit of information, and it is not in the packet, but I wanted to see if to allow, since it's not in the packet, to allow our public and those who watch by online, if we couldn't have Councilmember Fowler keep everyone apprised with this letter that he wrote so that we kind of all on the same, you're apprised of some of that went on. So this is a letter that I believe Kaufman County wrote to Mr. Fowler. So if you could read that.
I have all these.
I know, but, oh, can you read that one, though? So that kind of says in a nutshell, well, it's not exactly a nutshell, but it explains her.
It's a
her view.
quote of section 11001B, and that's what I'm gonna get into. I talked to Berman today about all these emails. So, I mean, they can read it. She's quoting the Texas Election Code 11.001, specifically section B, A2, said a person chooses in which territory the resident or person is located. The decision is made by the voter and cannot be made by the town. I guess to skip to this, since you asked me to, what that is saying is we're not, and the county's not responsible for verifying if a voter says, I live here and I vote here. That's not our job. And that's kind of taken out of context from the rest of this stuff, because we're not sitting up here. I guess I want to preference this per Berman to tell y'all the town does not have the authority to contest the election, but these are mere facts, and we do have the a right to ask the county about factual stuff. So that's all I'm presenting. We've had a lot of citizens, I guess, ask questions about the election. So I sent the entire council, and council, I didn't tell you to keep this confidential, but I probably would unless you get advice from Berman. This does have citizens' names in it, and I'm not saying it couldn't be public information requested by the citizens, but I think it would need some confidential redaction, or is it DDAC or redact? Redactions. So if you are asked by a citizen for these documents, this might need legal help.
And if you do so, we need a copy of whatever you send out, please.
Absolutely.
For our records, that's important.
So per the conversation with Berman today, also to let the citizens know who can file a contest to the election. Unsuccessful candidates and someone who was not allowed to vote who thought they should. They have 45 days to do so. But besides that, what I wanted to point out, and Mike helped me with Jeannie Ash, and we sat down with her. Just a quick review like we did in 2020 of addresses that are clearly outside the town. Sent them to her. There was 45 on the list, and she quickly reviewed the list and agreed that 36 of them should not be considered voters because of the fact of their property does not touch the town. So we're not debating if that person lied about where they live. That's not the point. The point is the property is not inside. Any piece of that property does not touch the town. So Jeannie Ash agreed with 36 of the 45 that was presented to her, and immediately sent us an email saying that they would be removed from the eligible voter list because they do not meet the definitions of the state statutes. And the problem with, the fact with that is 10 of those people participated in this election. So that's just a fact. Hunt County, on the other hand, y'all have read the email string with Tandy. It's
Hey, may I interject just because I want
Yes.
there's two different counties and I don't want
Yes.
it to be so confusing. So I did also talk with Jeannie Ash this morning, and she didn't say that per se, and I did look up the list that you had given, and so we may have to discuss some of that. And she was very, as she always has been, Jeannie has
She's
always
very
been
easy.
very willing to try and work with, she said, is this the voters' responsibility to help us, call us, many have. They want to do a good job. Now, I double-checked on this, now I'm presuming this is the list? Okay, so I did.
And I struck the name, so it's not, this is strictly address-based.
Okay, so in looking and I did spend some time on the CAD and look at some of this. So there were, I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 that were, and I did send her the ones I had question about, because just so the public is aware that on some of these, for instance, and I'm not going to mention names, but there was a person who subdivided and sold their property where the entire property was touching the town. They then sold several lots, then it made them not in the town. So that kind of thing can arise, or they can lease out their home a second home that they might have. So there's all kinds of situations that come up where there might be a person who comes of age and they are now eligible to vote, whereas previously they weren't. So there are many, many different criteria, and so that's why we leave it to the professionals. But if there are questions, again, and I am glad that they're looking into, we have had some discrepancies that do need to be vetted, and I'm all for that. But she did say that in their division, they do not require a written affidavit. If you contact them, tell them, they consider that adequate, because the way the law is written, it doesn't specify. It says that you have to let them know, but it doesn't specify whether it has to be a written affidavit or just telling them. So in Hunt County, she said that they don't require an affidavit. But if they make a claim, the ballot board will look at it, and they look up the map as contiguous. But again, there's many different criteria. And so there were several that I had questions about, and we're going to be continuing to work on it. I didn't hear back from her after I submitted about 5 that I had question on from this particular list. So
Well,
one that
I don't
you
want
sent?
you,
So Tara,
I don't want you to say
and I'm
addresses.
happy to share this with you. So on May 19th, I got a note from Jeannie, and she says, "We reviewed the spreadsheet you provided," the one we're talking about, "regarding the town of Poetry voters, and according to our maps, the voters in column R, highlighted in green, should remain within the city limits. We agree that the addresses highlighted in red should not be in the city and will be taken out."
Well, and that's
And
where.
That's what I said.
Okay, and I haven't seen that.
And I'll share it with you. I mean,
Well,
Yeah,
that's
so
what-
I need, if you guys are, so some of the ones that are in red are the ones that I actually saw that they were contiguous. And so that's where we need to discuss
I'll be glad to
that.
review that with you too. I mean, I sent them to her because this over here, this is blacked out, and just so y'all can see, there is no names attached to this. This is strictly address driven, regardless of who's signed up to work or to vote at this address. That's not our job to vet out. Our job is to protect our citizens as far as a clean list, and these
Sure.
addresses are clearly outside. Now, the ones she left in green, those are debatable, and I'm not going to debate her with it. At the end of the day, she has the right to say if it's contiguous or not. But the ones in red, she has agreed that are not contiguous to the town limits.
So did you guys spend hours going over the CAD map with that?
I have
or-
a lot of data because this goes up all the way back to
Okay.
2020. This data is pretty easy for me to pull.
Well, I know, it's easy on the CAD map, you just enter the address and it shows up. However, I did notice that sometimes there's more than one
Parcel.
parcel or more
Absolutely,
than one location
And that's
at
part
that
of the
address.
definition of contiguous, and that was looked into. But regardless, this is a work in progress. If you find something that you disagree with, I think it's our job
Sure.
to speak up for our citizens.
the interesting thing I'll share, Tara and others, is, and this is just my engineering brain, I guess I expected that even though we're in multiple counties, that because each of these election officials are obligated to follow state law, that they would do things the same. They do not.
They do not.
And they acknowledge that each elections office runs things differently and uses different criteria for determining whether voters should, and I was like, that just drives me mad.
Well, actually, so
Because
I
it's like,
know,
how can that
I've
be?
actually seen that they follow the election law, here's the election law. The election law states that, okay, that's from the attorney. So the election law is the same, and I know you're getting ready to go to Kaufman, and she said they've for the last 2 years, they have said the same thing, that they have the same standard across Kaufman County, but it does differ a little bit from Hunt
Right,
County standard.
And then I called the Secretary of State's office, because I said, well, surely they'll know. Well, they interpret it differently yet, and it's like,
Well,
how can this be? I mean, they all,
okay.
one of them uses the term contiguous, one of them says the word contiguous never appears anywhere, the other one says it's where they lay their head, the other one says it has nothing to do with lay their head, and it's like, you know, it's just one of those who's on first kind of thing.
But as council, we've agreed that contiguous, and with lots of attorney conversation, we agreed that contiguous is the defining matter. As long as you have a domicile on contiguous properties. You know, we all agreed that that wasn't how we did it in 2020, but moving forward, that was the most inclusive definition that we could have.
Right.
If you own multiple parcels of land that are all touching and in the definition of contiguous, and you have a domicile on it, well, then you're a voter. And to Tara's point, that is what Kaufman County does. That is what Hunt County does. But the problem with Kaufman, I say the problem, the inconsistencies with Kaufman are inconsistent. They're 180 degrees from Hunt County, and to your point, we have them doing two different things. And before you say they're not, they are. You have one county who says if they're contiguous, they vote. You have another county, Kaufman County, says if their domiciles inside the town, they get a vote. If they were on the list in 2020,
They get to choose.
they get to
She was very clear. I talked with her as well.
No, absolutely not. If your domicile is inside the town, you get a vote. If your domicile is outside the line, and the new line that we're talking about is the line that CAD drew, that made new parcels.
That has nothing to do, I talked with her this morning. That has nothing to do with that. And she wrote
It
an
has
email.
everything to do with that. That's why you read the email of the citizen that's right back here that cannot vote because they have a new line drawn across their property.
Okay, so I talked with Tandy, and she said, and again, you can talk with her again. She wrote an email specifying that her stance has been the same the last 2 years.
That's
that
not
she
true.
has, well,
I got the proof. You've read the proof. You've read that she said, well, he was on the list in 2020. That's prior to my tenure. So to my point, you're a voter if you're inside the town limits. You're a voter if you were on the list in 2020. And you're a voter if you write a letter of intent to vote and you're outside the parcel.
we covered this a year ago with
And we're
our
still having
legal
problems.
counsel. So the code, let me go ahead and read that code. The code is, in this code, now I'm trying not to break attorney-client privilege, but this is the resident, now this is from Kaufman County. In this code, 1.015 residence. In this code, residence means domicile, that is one's home and fixed place of habitation to which one intends to return after any temporary absence. A person may establish residence for the purpose of influencing the outcome, may not establish residence for the purpose of influencing the outcome of a certain election. Okay, so a person does not lose the person's residence by leaving the person's home to go to another place for temporary purposes only. A person does not acquire a residence in a place to which the person has come for temporary purposes only and without the intention of making the place the person's home. A person who is an inmate in a penal institution or who is an involuntary inmate in a hospital or institution does not, while an inmate, acquire residence at the place where the institution is located. A person may not establish a residence at any place the person has not inhabited. So that's kind of key there. A person may not designate a previous residence as a home and fixed place of habitation unless the person inhabits the place at the time of designation and intends to remain.
So one thing I'd like to clarify is talking with the Secretary of State and otherwise, don't confuse home, fixed place of habitation, or domicile with a four-walled roof structure. That's not the same thing. People can vote whether they live in a trailer that's fixed to the ground or a tent that's fixed to the ground. It doesn't have to meet a building code for you to get a vote in a town. Your domicile, your home, your fixed place of residence
Where you
is
say
just
this.
the building on which you reside. It doesn't have to necessarily, if you have the building outside of the town of Poetry, that doesn't mean you can't vote by this. That residence, that piece of land on which your home is what makes the definition. And it's very inclusive, because lots of people don't live in just the basic standard house.
And I agree with you. This whole council agrees with you. I want you to turn to June 5th, 2023 at 10:50. It's an email from Tandy to me, because Tara says it doesn't matter.
Which page?
June 5th,
Well,
2023.
you're putting words in my mouth.
Page
I didn't
5.
say it
The
didn't
9
matter.
o'clock,
You said, Tandy said it doesn't matter where the home is.
9:41.
Tandy says,
No,
page
no,
5.
clarification, that's not what I said, Terry.
Okay.
Just clarification.
Tell me
Don't-
what you said then.
I'm just saying, Terry, what Tandy has sent an email this morning saying she has, for the last 2 years, year and a half, 2 years, she has said the same thing. And she has been very consistent with me every single time I've talked with her.
Okay. So the individuals in question have not been registered in Portree as their homes does not sit in the town limits.
Right, so I've talked to them because I had to clarify my property, and they were saying the way they did it is, by default, if it looks like your home, that fixed place that I have it, well, I mean, it's not really that. If your house is outside, by default, they're not putting you on the list. If your house is in, by default, they're putting you on the list.
And how does that make sense?
Now, I don't know.
So after
They'll have
talk-
to talk to that themselves.
Okay, so-
But they clarify in many places and have told me too that, okay, that's our default, but if you request one way or another, we're gonna do that. I mean, people could request not to get a vote in the town of Poetry, even though their house is in, or if their house is outside but on the same property, they can request it. I don't know why they do that default. I would, if I was running it, I'd do the default in the most inclusive way possible.
And that is the way Hunt County does it. Kaufman says you have to file an affidavit. Now, I got interrupted, but the item B on here says, for a person who resides on a property located in more than one territory described by subsection A2, the person shall choose in which territory the residence of the person is located. Now, this has been in all the paperwork.
It has.
And so that person must choose. Now, the only difference I'm seeing is that Hunt County will allow you to choose by a call or just stating that. Kaufman County requires you to file a written affidavit to choose. So the law does say you must choose. You have a choice, you choose. So,
You're right, but it's not consistent.
And how
we're-
so?
And this is how so. I don't want to point anybody out, but there's people in this room whose house is behind the town limit line that are on the registered voter list. I know for a fact,
but
because
Terry,
Tandy,
that's not the definition. The definition is if you can have 1 foot of property in the town, but your house can be 500 feet back,
The
and you
citizen-
get to choose whether, because you're in
you
two
get to
different-
choose, but there's no letters of intent filed in the Kaufman County Administrator's Office for any of these voters saying they want to choose to vote in Portree. And there is your
How do
difference.
you know that?
Because I've asked her. She cannot provide one. I've
Okay.
asked her name by name by name.
Okay, but again, she's only been there for
That's
2
inconsistent.
years.
It doesn't matter how long she's been there. Her job is to reconcile the list.
Okay, but here's what I understand too. When I called the elections division previously, that the previous person who was in the position did not demand a written affidavit. I was told that they hired Tandy specifically from Dallas because she is more by the letter of the law. She requires it written. So you may be correct that there isn't a
100%.
pass affidavit. Now, with that said,
So do they get a free pass because they were pre her tenure?
well,
Does
okay,
that make
here's-
that election list legit?
Here's what I mean, I feel like it should be more inclusive, but if
100%.
someone, okay,
But we have voters that are not being able to vote because they don't have a letter of intent, and I have voters who are in the same situation that don't have a letter of intent
Here-
filed that are voting.
here's the final, okay, so I did also write the Secretary of State, and I'm expecting a response. However, in talking with not talking with him, writing Mr. Berman, he said, look, at this point going forward, we need to encourage everybody to make their choice with the elections division, and we need to stay kind of out of it. Make their choice. We can encourage, it can't be me, it can't be your spouse, it has to be the individual voter going to the elections division. If there's any problem, you tell them, yes, I would choose to vote in the town of Poetry elections. We are more complicated, and so, but you choose, according to state law, both counties agree on that. You get to choose, but you have to make that choice declaration. Now, there has been some turnover in both counties in the last, 2 years, so they may not have the records. But if there's a problem, We do, and there are fewer provisional votes this time than ever before, so it has been improving, and I don't want it to be, come across that it hasn't been improving. They are trying really hard. We are very complex, and they have 62,000 voters in Kaufman County and they can't just spend, for our 1,300 and something voters, they can't just, go, and actually one thing that did come out is for the last year and a half, we've been causing them a lot of extra work, and, I've been told that they are going to increase our costs because we've been paying,
Well,
it's
I'm
been
not-
causing
I'm-
them a lot of extra work.
I'm
and-
not gonna let that scare me out of keeping these voters a chance to vote, so.
Well, actually, we're supposed to stay out of it as a council, so
Well,
we
did you
need-
validate it? She said she sent you a validation form prior to the election that
I didn't-
validates the addresses.
So all they send is whether a validation, and it's basically by roads, and that is something that Councilmember Anderson signed off on as Mayor Pro Tem. I stay out of it.
Is it address driven or is it block driven?
It's block driven.
Okay.
And so, and I refuse to sign it because I don't have the hours to go through and vet that, but.
Well,
but
Berman
nothing has
says that's what
changed.
we need to do.
But nothing has changed since our incorporation. There have been absolutely no annexations. We have our first one coming up next month. So nothing has changed since the original.
So the citizen I'm talking about, go to page 8. You say nothing's changed.
Page 8 of what?
Page 8 of the email thread between me and Tandy. Actually, page 7 starts it. I asked at the bottom, what about so-and-so citizen? They've been registered to vote and voting at that address since 2008.
Now, this citizen reached out to me on Election Day.
Well, can I finish?
Okay.
Page 8. I do understand I'm only conveying the information that I have available. Again, says the election code, which you say they have to choose. How is that citizen not disenfranchised from any other voter that hasn't wrote a letter of intent?
Well, let me explain on this one. It's a unique situation because their home is in Hunt County. Their land that's in the town of Poetry border is completely in Kaufman County. So that is a very, very peculiar and unique case.
But it's not, because they've been registered in Kaufman
They-
County since
okay, but-
2008.
Yes, but remember that when the town formed, you then had two separate territories. So they have to declare whether they want to vote in the town of Poetry or not. It doesn't automatically happen.
Well, I'll say this, is that I'm in a similar situation. My house is in Hunt County, and I'm a voter in Kaufman because I do get to choose. Secretary of State told me that, and we got the email for it. And I've seen some inconsistency in Kaufman too. I know they're trying to improve and all that, but I don't think they're perfect. And I don't know why we'd get heated about it since it wasn't really us that did it. But I'd certainly be open to reaching out to people because I think that everybody needs to be informed. Everybody should personally reach out to Kaufman that is registered in Kaufman to make sure that they're right on the list.
And how do we get everybody to do that, Simeon?
Well, I mean, actually, my follow-up was to ask you what you suggested. Personally, I would say, getting a letter out there, getting some information.
So
That way we
this
can
is the start of it. This is the fact finding. And to Berman's point, we cannot affect the election, and that's not what we're trying to do. We should be advocates for these citizens and the citizens' rights to vote. And when I have citizens tell me they can't vote when they've been voting here since 2008, and really all this boils down to that Kaufman appraisal line. So in your deal, if any citizen's been adversely affected, this is an adverse effect.
So, but she refuted that and said that was absolutely incorrect.
Well, but
Because the property ID has no impact on that whatsoever.
It
She said
shouldn't,
no
but
line.
it shouldn't. It's not about the property ID. The property ID just happens to go and align with the town of Poetry limits. If you live, like Simeon's case, and say it was Kaufman County, if you live on this side, you have to tell her you want to vote on this side.
Okay,
And it's
so,
because of that line that was drawn. That is an adverse effect of Hunt County Appraisal District drawing that line in the map.
Kaufman.
Or Kaufman County Appraisal District.
the line is there on both maps. The line is there on Hunt County and Kaufman County. It has nothing to do
Not
with.
on CAD, it's not.
Yes, it is.
It
absolutely-
wasn't.
I was following it today.
Okay.
It absolutely is. That line is there in both counties. It has nothing,
So now we need to
nothing
look
to
out for this in
do.
Hunt County.
Is it a separate parcel in Hunt County? Because last time I checked, there wasn't a separate parcel
hadn't
for what
split.
was
They
in.
don't, they didn't, okay, so we're conflating issues here.
Yeah, that's
This has
what I'm
n-
talking about.
The property ID split out is only in Kaufman County. However, the CAD maps for Hunt County and Kaufman have the town poetry line
Right.
for each county. So, but that has nothing, now that does show you if their property, any sliver of a person's property is in the hard boundary of poetry and their domicile is outside of that hard boundary, then they get to choose. But they do have to state that choice. It doesn't matter, and it counts. And just like we said in the Poetry Post in our interview, and Bob Brown, he said he's been doing it for 8 years. He said, look, if you move down the road, you still have to re-register. Okay, you have to let them know. And in the October issue of Poetry Post, Tom and I worked very hard on in trying to let people know if you have a problem, if you don't have the CPY on your voter's card or the TPT on your voter's card, Town of Poetry on one, or the CPY on your voter card, then guess what? You're not in their logs is voting in the Town of Poetry. You need to contact the Elections Division for whatever county you live in, and that's exactly what, and so we have the numbers here. Kaufman County Elections Division 469-376-4595. Hunt County Elections Division 903-454-5467. And they have, they would be more than happy. They want to do a good job. It is imperfect, but they want to do a good job.
Not to belabor this, but kind of to Simeon's point, I can tell you, I sat 3 feet away from Tandy talking about this in one of the discussions for this election, and she made it very clear to me that the parcel split in Kaufman County was going to disqualify
Thank
all
you.
of the voters whose homes
Thank you.
were on the wrong side of the line.
She
She
did-
told me that 3 feet from me, and so I'm just telling you, I don't think it's gonna change anything, but if they ever go through and do like a scrub on that database, she said everybody needs to come in that's house is on the outside of that little parcel split and declare that they want the front piece of their property to be their voting basis.
And that's our
So
job.
I'm just saying, I don't think that's gonna cause a problem, but let's say somebody comes in after Tandy and decides, ooh, we need to go through and clean this up. They could just arbitrarily eliminate a bunch of voters whose houses,
Well, okay, but again, it's conflating issues. It's not the property split out, it's basically the boundary. That is our boundary. So the boundary happened in both Hunt County, this is the boundary line. The boundary line, yes, the boundary line made you automatically, if your house is behind that boundary line, then you're in 2 territories, therefore the law kicks in
Right.
saying that you have to choose.
Right.
Now,
but before that split, there wasn't 2 territories.
well, and we were
One
new,
territory.
we were a new town. We were one area, and so you
Right.
just automatically voted for Terrell, probably.
Well, the split out didn't happen for,
But it has nothing to
over
do
a
with the
year.
split out.
but he's saying she told him
No,
it did.
it has to do with the boundary line. That is the boundary line for both Hunt and Kaufman County. It has nothing to do with the split out, and I did talk with her. It is the boundary line. And you are correct in that the boundary line, yes, you're now in 2 territories. You have to declare where you want to vote. I talked with a fella that was very upset. He wanted to vote in the November election. He had to vote provisionally. And he's like, why? I've lived here my whole life, almost, and 60-something years. I'm like, well, did you go file an affidavit? He goes, no. I'm like, well, you need to go file, I've been telling you, you need to go file an affidavit with Kaufman County, and you'll get to do that. He did, and he had no problem.
Okay.
So,
I just asked for your help on this because we're all advocates for our citizens. I want everybody to be able to vote.
me too, me too.
I would ask, because you can see the threads with Tandy were getting shorter and shorter. I want you to ask her, the Kaufman County, the spreadsheet that I titled Kaufman Outside Town List, I want you to ask her to give you any and all vetted or filed letters for these voters, and tell me how many you get.
Well, on
There's
the,
44 on here. Surely she has one.
okay, on all these, so you said yes, they voted.
That's beside the point. I want to know, because these are people whose domicile is outside the split out, the town line. I want to know which one of these 44 filed a letter.
Well, that is
And
a
how
good.
does that make them different from the citizens
Okay,
that
so
we talked about?
okay, I'm waiting from the Secretary of State to say whether it has to be written or whether it can just be a call or, and depending on what the Secretary of State says.
Even a call would need to be documented.
I would
somewhere.
think, but again, she doesn't have the records, and if she doesn't have the records, then she doesn't have them. But I think to be proactive, we just encourage our citizens, hey, if you had any trouble whatsoever in the election, contact them, file the affidavit.
And to Berman's point, he thinks we should do that, and I would be glad to. When we get close to election, we can ask for the registered voters. We're not saying who's voting from this address. We can validate that form to say, these appear to be in the town. At that point, Berman's like, well, how do you reach the ones that are not? And I think that's just a public statement, but you can't put addresses out there. So I still don't know how we tell these citizens that you might not be able to vote because you didn't declare it.
Like Tom and I did, trying to be proactive in last year, is if your voter card doesn't have CPY or TPT on it, then you need
So
to
look
go
at,
check.
look at the provisional vote list and make sense of that for me. The Kaufman County provisional list, unedited. I didn't take anybody's names off that. The district says CPTY, correct? I might have blocked
What
y'all's out.
page are you on?
This is the Kaufman County provisional list.
No, you didn't black it out.
Okay.
I wasn't even gonna print it out.
Okay.
So I know, like, on the bottom of that list, the Barbers, they've lived there for what, at least a year? Their provisional
let's-
did not count.
I'm gonna
So-
try not to use their name, but there's two names on here that are this, share the same last name, have the exact same address. One counted, one didn't. The one that didn't is on the registered voter list.
Well, then maybe that person went and filed an affidavit and the other one didn't.
She's on the registered voter list.
Okay, so did that person file the affidavit? And I don't know.
What affidavit needs to be filed? They're within the town limits. I'm just saying, there's some inconsistencies here
So
that we
whi-
need
which,
to.
which one are you referring to here? Okay, so she just moved. Since she just moved, she has to file. She has not lived there but less than a year. She just moved in that. She's been renovating. I know that because
Her registered voter address is this address right here.
okay, but she just moved.
Okay, the registered voter list
Mm-hmm.
that was given to us 30 days before the election has this address on it.
Okay.
Is that not an affidavit that she's
I
voting
don't
from that
know,
address?
but I do know that every time you move, you have to file. But there's a lot, and again, we're not the experts. All we can
Who
do
is?
is we can lead our voters, our citizens to go file the affidavits, but we contract with these divisions. They are imperfect. You know, I know that, I believe they are both trying to do the best job they can. It is difficult. It's because it's new. And we do have a unique makeup for a town, kind of like FEC and Encore had a very difficult time. They finally got to the end of it, and it just took a lot of time. And so with this, I think being proactive, telling our people, please go file that affidavit, please go talk to the elections division if you have any question whatsoever. But we, you know,
I think we definitely do that moving forward. I think the validation, to Berman's point, is the one like Jeannie Ash at Hunt County did. That's 10 voters that shouldn't be on our vote count.
well, and I have a lot of questions on that, because when I looked on the CAD, they were contiguous.
And I'll be glad to look at them with you.
Yeah.
Just the ones in
We need
red,
to spend
so.
some time, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw several that I disagreed with, and
send
they
them to
were
me.
contiguous.
But so
had some as
agree,
well.
disagree. Maybe there's one that should have got in. But this is, I think, until this town gets really moving, I think this is the job of council before the election happens to validate that people are not voting in this election that shouldn't be.
Well, and now that we have the list, and I do appreciate all the work, and it is important, and I do appreciate all your effort in that, and it has been an ongoing issue, and so, yeah, we want to get to the bottom of it. Now, in emailing Attorney Berman, on our website, we have a very outdated voting list. He suggested we take that off. I want to...
Jeannie Ash has almost demanded to take it off.
Yeah, we need to take that off, because the minute they put it out, it's outdated, because someone could die, someone could move, someone could divide a parcel,
Registered voter list.
and the intention, I think we voted on it a couple years ago to put it on the website, but we need to vote to take that off.
Well, the only thing that makes that legal, and we did discuss that, is it has to have a caveat on the bottom that says, as of this day.
And so we need, but we're
But
not.
it's still a little misleading, so.
It is.
I would take it
think
off.
that would be our motion here, if I were going to suggest something, that we vote to take that off, because, and that's what both of the elections directors told me. The attorney said, look, the intention was good, I think, but the outcome has not been.
Well, I would like to see another part of this, and I think my takeaway on this is I want either we form a committee, which two of us and the mayor, so we don't have a quorum, but I think some kind of list validation 60 days prior to the election is, to Berman's point, is going to be crucial in having these elections vetted out.
Okay, so if you do 60, you'd have to back it up, because I know on this side of things, 60 days before the election is too late. You should be doing it now.
But it's a moving list.
Well, it is, but here's the thing. I should share with you sometime privately how many documents are required, and the sign-off sheet that I think Councilmember Anderson signed off on was probably more than 60 days prior to the election. So it needs to be not 60 days, it would need to be probably 90 to 100 days before an
Well,
election.
whatever this council thinks. I mean, these documents are already made. They're easy to pull into CAD. There's going to be a few new voters, but Jeannie, I'm telling you, she was.
I asked for the same meeting with Tandy because I think there's so much that can be done in person, conversation. Text message threads get all misread. But anyways, Jeannie, she had a, I don't know, hour-long meeting with us, Jeffy? And it was, I mean, she answered a lot of questions. I'm like, okay, at the end of the day, but I didn't have that chance with Tandy, so.
Well, and she has been in charge of a runoff election.
And she said that.
So,
But I guess, to be clear, isn't our next poetry election in May 2025, 2 years away?
well, that's for the council, but we might have other measures on the ballot.
Well, we don't have anything planned now.
Well, I have something possibly for this November, but I can't mention it now.
Okay.
So,
moving forward, what's the council's desire as far as cleaning up these lists, assisting the county? The county has a large job, but obviously I mean, Jeannie admits that there was faults in the election, so.
it is an imperfect process. As much as we'd like to dream that it would be 100% flawless, it is a moving, because the minute you make a list, the next day it's going to possibly be outdated. It is a fluid list. People die, people move, people divide their property, people come of age, people become imprisoned and become felons, and so it's just a fluid list, and so I would like to motion immediately that we take the list offline.
Do we have any public comments?
Yes,
before
we have
go to a vote?
speakers.
Okay, Shelley and Patrick Smith, I don't see them,
No.
and then Glenn Strauss. You want to pass? Okay.
Okay, so I make a motion, we pull the voters list off the website.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Jaffe, seconded by 3 people, I believe. We'll go with Councilmember Blake, since he's to my left, and I heard him first. So all those in favor?
Yep.
And that passes unanimously. Thank you.
That's not the only action, though, as I
No,
mentioned.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what is council's, I mean, I want to help.
I do not want to have another election where I get multiple calls of, I didn't get to vote, how do I get to vote, why didn't I get to vote?
Well, I think regardless if the list is moving all the time, we should tackle it now. It just makes the list smaller going forward. I mean,
Well,
not
especially-
everybody's gonna be moving, not everybody's
Right,
gonna
the
send
ones
out
we
the
know,
ones-
for instance, the one
do all we
who's
can
been voting
do.
since 2008. Has she
You have all the
been,
facts.
has she
get-
filed the affidavit yet,
Yeah, I don't know.
So the ones we know, they absolutely can.
So what does that look like? Do we want to do a 6-month, get the registered voter list, do just like we did with Jeannie? Hey, here's our town boundaries, this is what we think may be out. And there's going to be a bigger group, so there won't be any finger pointing. But at the end of the day, it's not our job to say who lives in the town. It's our job to say what's in the town. Agreed? I
Well,
mean, does
we can-
council agree with that?
Yeah,
Tara, do
we
you
can only
agree?
establish the boundaries. We can't.
That's
make
right.
any Statements about voting.
That's
We-
right.
Right, we don't determine who gets to vote. We
That's
don't
right.
have all the information required.
But we do have the boundaries and the definition of contiguous property with a domicile. Because there's properties in this town that don't have domiciles because they live in other cities. They're obviously not a voter. But we do have the definition of our town boundaries and has a domicile on it.
Well, but there's a tangential issue in that and I think this came up a year or so ago, we need to make sure that we have a certified survey map and all of that, because if we're ever challenged in court, and I don't remember which one of our attorneys brought it up, but he said, you know, you need to go back and have somebody like, that's official, bless
Right.
your map.
Right, and and then it's, of course, a process, so since we have a voluntary annexation happening next month, it has, that's a whole legal process. We're putting that in the newspaper, then we have to, it's a public forum. So we're trying to follow the legal code on that. So next month, we have one voluntary annexation. It won't affect any voter at all. It's the same citizen, but just additional sliver of property. So once that's in, I anticipate that that little sliver will be a new part of Poetry, our only annexation, voluntarily annexation. Then we can go forward, hopefully, getting a professional map made, professional list. But again, it will be fluid, and so we can establish our boundaries and the potential. And I already have. But again, it's fluid. A potential voter list, but again, we don't have all the criteria. They could be in the town border, but maybe they're a felon and don't get the. We just don't have.
But we're not looking at people at this point. That's exactly to my point. We're looking at properties with domiciles. We're not looking at voters. That is
Yeah.
not our job.
Well,
That
and
is against the law.
And we have a list. We can get that
And that's
firmed
what
up.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying we should review. If
But
it's
again-
biannual,
Yeah, no, we probably should have. Probably wouldn't hurt to have a committee doing that. That is a mountain of work. But someone who's good with CAD and
Yeah,
doesn't mind detail researching.
that never changes. I mean, you're right. If you get property addresses and say, anyone that lives on these properties, unless you have some reason not to put them in the system, they should be in the system.
Well, they're at least eligible.
Well, it does change though, because we have that case in point of a person on 2400 who subdivided their property. They had, I don't know how many lots in front, and they put theirs in back, and then
They're no
now
longer voters.
they're no longer a voter, eligible voter.
That's what this committee should be looking at. That they lose the definition of contiguous properties when they sow that whatever touched the town.
And that was their choice, because they, but,
That's right.
okay. All right, so we've.
So obviously, I'll champion that committee, and I'll put it on my own shoulders if nobody wants to get into Excel spreadsheets, because it's not really that much fun. But I think we ought to look at it twice a year. So how far in advance of November would you say? 90 days?
At least 90 days, because when they start, Tom, do you remember, so for the May election, man, it was early. It was March when you had to sign that off, I believe.
Yeah,
It was
also the
early.
November election, we were late, and Tandy Smith
They were not happy.
gave me a very hard time. It was not a pleasant meeting.
Well, and remember that, there's just. it's
Jenny
just-
Ash was fine, but Tandy Smith was not happy.
So I would say if you're going to, I would say at least 120 days before. And you'll have the lion's share of all of it. And then there might be a few changes, but that way you're not holding anybody up. And if there happens to be a change, just as one I've talked to, that would just take, it wouldn't
How about a
take that long.
conversation with Tandy and Jeannie and said, hey, if we was going to scrub our list for addresses, when would you want it? And then just let them decide when they want it.
Well, and you gotta get.
Because they're still
citizens-
making voter lists up to 30 days before the election, right?
Well, no, they have to have registered, no.
In theory, yes, but what they both told me was, by that point, they're so overwhelmed with not just us, but all the
Yeah.
other
Sure.
communities. That's not enough time.
To-
So your point, Tara, of 90 days or 120 is really easier, or more likely for them to get it right, both elections, because they're overwhelmed with all these other small cities, and that's somewhat in their defense. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
I know Tandy Smith was angry, but she has at least some defenses that she was overwhelmed. Their whole staff were.
So to give you an idea, today, I didn't get an invoice. What I got was, will you sign the contract for the November election? Today. This is June 20th. Today, they want me to sign a contract if we're going to need a November election. So it happens very early. There's so much paperwork that has to be filed for an election. It started today. in June,
Well,
June 20th.
I would throw in too, Terry, that on that timing, how far you back up, since the intention is we want to get things right, we need to give the voters plenty of time to get their registration corrected, right? They've got to do that so many days in advance.
Well, I don't even think that's gonna be I don't think that's something we put out to the citizens, right? I don't think we put out that these addressers, I think to the point that we need to tell everybody that they need to make sure that they're in, but golly, I don't think we wanna get in the arena of telling Glenn Strauss, hey, you're not on the voter list. It's not our job. Because we're strictly looking at addresses. We have to take the names off the addresses.
If you're looking at addresses, why don't you start next week? I mean, it doesn't
Well,
really.
so how about July and January? I started last week. I started 2 weeks ago. I mean, so these are current.
Okay.
But if Tandy says, I would like to see those in July, well, then we'll just do them in July, but
So you're suggesting we ask the elections divisions, so,
for the registered voters in our town, and then we go through
but they're
their-
going to say that
It's a
I've heard
living
this
list.
over and over and over, that if there's any discrepancy, the individual voter has to go
Right.
in.
We're talking about strictly addresses. If I get addresses, there's 10 that are clearly, let's call them Buena Vista, let's just call it that far out. We have the right at that point. We're not talking about a voter any longer. We're talking about an address that they have that are saying is in our, that is in our town.
All right, then why don't we just go from the information you've already worked really hard on, just take that and kind of roll it into a committee and just continue to vet what you already worked on.
Yeah.
Because obviously, you know, I found some things that I had questions about. I did email, I emailed Jeannie today on that, and I haven't gone through the list. I didn't have time, because I only got this yesterday afternoon. So, but I would like to have an opportunity, and we want to get it right. That's the bottom
Absolutely.
line. I think we want to make sure that
100%.
everyone who is possibly eligible to vote
Gets
can
an
vote
opportunity.
and gets an opportunity to vote. And so, in trying to be proactive, you know, why don't we, I'd be happy to, you know, meet with you and whichever election director, but I think they are overwhelmed at times, and if we can handle some of it via email, you know.
I mean, it really didn't take Jeannie that long. I mean,
Okay.
I sent it to Mike. Mike had already had conversations with her. I think within 24 hours, Mike, she scrubbed that list.
Okay, I
So-
mean, the CAD program is very user-friendly, I thought, but, so, is there, since Mike, you've already been a part of this, do you want you and Terry and, myself to maybe continue trying to
Yeah,
vet the
I'm happy to
list,
help
or-
on it again.
Or
What
the
I-
list of addresses?
Okay.
You know, my quest was a little bit the same as Terry's, but a little different in that I was just trying to come up with understanding of how it works so that I could explain it to people when we get into these difficult spots. And to me, it's as clear as mud still, so I'm trying to figure it out. But yeah, I think there is value in just understanding our town boundaries better and where parcels lie and, you know, having a list. Like, I mean, it's fluid, but it's not really. I mean, our town boundary is gonna change over the next couple of years. So once we kind of run through it, which we really already have, it's done.
So I don't think we have to
It's just a matter of
vote on
checking
that.
it.
Let's just do it.
Okay, I'm good
But
with
I
that.
would ask you to ask Tandy to show you, I need all the letters. That's the only way we're gonna say this is gonna be fair. And if the letters of intent have not been filed, then there is no letter of intent. If they have been filed, well, then she's right. The citizens back here should have filed a letter.
Did they vote previously in previous
They
elections?
voted in previous elections for
And that may be
poetry.
the president.
They were before her tenure.
Or for her tenure, so that, if she's
Yeah.
going by that,
But we have other citizens
And
that
that may
have
be a
voted.
decision by the Secretary of State, and I will ask
Sure.
that question.
Yeah.
So I think that's a valid question for the
Well,
Secretary of State.
And I would guess that people like Tandy and Jeannie are not looking for work.
No.
Like, they're not looking for extra projects for their staff
No.
to do, so unless somebody's making a lot of noise, I'm pretty sure they're not gonna go digging around and think, what can we improve today? If they're just like, you know what, if the phone ain't ringing, leave it alone, so.
Hear you.
Okay, so have we exhausted this subject?
Oh, we have
For
another
tonight,
election
anyway.
coming soon, so.
Took as
Oh
long as
my.
the first 7 items.
Oh, my word, yes.
Yeah, maybe.
But it's only 8:34. The night is still young.
Unless you didn't get a vote, and it's still living in those people's minds,
Yeah.
right? Unless you didn't get a vote, and then it's still a real deal with those citizens.
Or
Well,
those that
and
aren't eligible to vote.
right, and there were fewer. I have to say, there were fewer provisional votes than ever before. When we first had our poetry elections, it was 60 plus, and so this time, I think, even with the three early, it was a total of what, 13. So it's been much improved. So all right.
Call it.
There's only one in Hunt County, I think.
There was one in Hunt County. Yep. Okay, moving on. General public comments. So I have here Shelley Smith, Patrick Smith, but they're not here. Chad McFarland's not here. Glenn, pass. Kevin, Jack Sinkovich, pass. Okay. All right. Well, 0 citizen comments. I suppose so. The time is now 8:35. Meeting adjourned.